Hello everyone, this is Seeker Roma Gaming with episode 5 of my StarSector Let's Play for new players. This episode we are continuing on from the last one where we came across our treasure, as we could call it, which will give us enough credits to start our fleet and colonies as well. However, at the moment we can't really get into the colonial game yet because we don't have enough ships, specifically fleet capacity with which to deploy a colony, or enough crew capacity either. Likewise, we haven't actually found any suitable worlds in the galaxy yet. We have only just explored a couple of places. So our priority first is to buff our fleet up a bit, get a bit more capacity going for it, get some levels up if we can, some things to benefit our overall fleet capabilities. Specifically, industry would be a good one, but we need to focus on navigation and sensors first. And then after that, we can continue exploring, and we should hopefully find planets with better habitability. So one of the first things I want to go for is try and focus on getting a new set of cruisers. The Venture class is what I'm going to be looking for. And for this episode, I'm going to be doing a bit of different editing to eliminate a lot of the dead parts. But for now, what I can say is I'm going to be heading back to the core worlds, offloading my treasure, and looking for replacement starships. When I am back in Hybrasil, I will see you there. Okay. So I actually decided to stop off at Zagan, at the planet of Ilm, an independent world. Hopefully we can look at the ships that are available here, and we can grab something that might be useful to us. Likewise, we can sell our blueprints and things like this for the same price as most anywhere else, as there is no supply and demand for these kinds of items. Things like food, harvested organs, metals, these will be affected by demand prices, but blueprints and I believe weapons are generally the same no matter where you sell them. Obviously, not taking into account tariffs of 30%, but yeah. So I can offload my Astral Carrier blueprint, gives me a nice chunk of change. Offload these mod blueprints, the harvested organs. I will keep 200 metal for building satellites. Actually no, just 100 should be fine for now. Offload everything else and some weaponry. Okay, that's a good chunk of change we just got right there. And now I want to look at fleets, and let's see if there's any good ships that we can grab from here. So what I know that we need to get our hands on is a couple of survey ships, a couple of, or at least just one civilian personnel transport, maybe a freighter. But this is primarily what the ship we're looking for, is a Venture class cruiser. This ship is slow, it is not particularly amazing at combat, but it has a surveying equipment, and in this case, because of the ship's hull size, it will drastically reduce the cost of surveying planets for us. Having a couple of these ships in your fleet alongside some drone tenders, which are on the open market I believe, a couple of drone tenders can reduce your surveying costs dramatically. Most planets will be just 5 supplies, but larger, more dangerous worlds will still be some. Ideally, you could have a fleet full of these cruisers, or later on use modifications with surveying equipment on massive ships, which would give the most benefit. But for now, I'm quite fond of the Venture Cruiser because it's got a built-in string of mining pod fighters, which operate as laser point defense, and it's an all-round general tough ship. It's not too bad in terms of usage or supplies, but it's not a fast ship. You can see by the speed being at 40. Compare that to say, let's say a Hammerhead, which in this case is base speed of 90. So it's a very, very slow ship. But for now, we want this cruiser. And whilst we are here, we would also like to get a nice big freighter. Now, the most ideal freighter would be something like the Atlas. In this case, this is the modified combat variant, so this is not as good for cargo transport. I'm not so fan of this as a combat ship either, owing to the fact that it has a very small shield arc, and in my experience tends to just get chewed up by lots of long-range lasers. But for the moment, we can go with the Colossus Heavy Freighter, as this ship is quite cheap for its price and gives us a very, very generous 900 cargo capacity. Fuel capacity is not as good, but its fuel usage is particularly cheap, same with maintenance. So again, this is a very economical ship to have in your fleet for pure usage of carrying cargo. We'll grab this one as well. And again, we are also probably wanting to add another drone tender to our fleet. This ship will reduce survey and salvage, survey costs and improve salvage capabilities. So I'm going to grab a drone tender, one that is not damaged. It's a little bit cheaper for a damaged version, but the associated costs of having it is not really worth it, considering the ship itself is not that expensive. And next up, we need to get our hands on a couple of ships of the line, or in this case, just any ship that can hold the line, really. The most advantageous you probably look at is like a nice large ship with lots of guns, but what you're actually preferring is potentially more ships focused on a smaller fire platform. A good starting ship is actually the Enforcer Destroyer, owing to its massive armor and its array of guns, which can make it just a flying gun battery. The ship is not very fast, however, so against longer ranged opponents it tends to just get dragged out until it gets killed from behind. But combined with other ships such as, say, the Falcon Cruiser, which is a substantially faster ship. In this case, you see the pirate version of this has a little bit extra speed. We would generally like to pair maybe this ship with this ship. It's actually a sort of a nice little match. There are better options out there, but for what we have available right now, this is two good ships to add to the roster. So now we've got a bunch of new ships in the fleet. We need to organize things appropriately, hire some more crew, get some more supplies, and most importantly, equip the ships. Because that will take us a fair bit of money to do so. You should always want to leave some spare. Don't worry about spending all your credits from your initial exploration straight away, because the purpose of this is to take this new fleet out, go and explore some more, find some more treasure, come back, bring it back. Eventually, once your fleet has the capability, like mine should do in terms of supply usage, but not in crew usage. So once we have that capacity and we've found a few suitable planets, we will then head back out for the sole purpose of colonizing worlds, which we should actually only do so once we have some skills in which to do so anyway. But for right now, let's get organizing our fleet. I would like to make this cruiser as my flagship, followed by the destroyer for my officer, and the civilian cruiser as another sort of ship of the line, you could say. We'll leave the civilian ships at the back, as we hope to never put these into combat unless we are absolutely desperate. If you're playing on Iron Man, you get to this point, it's probably the end of the game for you. Although, to be fair, these drone tenders can be quite tough little ships. So, first let's grab some crew. At least we won't have that to worry about. And now let's fit the ships as appropriate. So, for the civilian ships, we want to get rid of the disadvantages of these civilian-grade hulls. And in terms of weaponry, we don't really care all that much. I know you can convert these things into fighters if you wanted, or to launch fighters rather, but these ships are so structurally weak that they would be rather insufficient for that purpose anyway. But at least getting rid of this sensor profile problem and giving them a bonus to our sensor strength will impact us for exploration purposes. Likewise, giving them reinforced bulkheads means that if they do get caught, at least maybe you can salvage them afterwards. But for the moment, we'll just round it out. And for the freighter, the same thing, militarized subsystems. And in this case, we could possibly even expand the cargo hold a little bit. Yes, look at that, a juicy extra 270 storage. And because we militarized the subsystems, we don't get the negative penalty, which is increasing maintenance usage. You'll notice there that there is no change to maintenance at all. And as for guns, we can strap on really anything. light machine guns. Doesn't matter. Give it a share of venting and capacitors. Drone tender, same thing. Get another try of systems. And for this one, let's see. It has a decent amount of cargo capacity, and it's quite a fast ship. We don't really care about deck crew. This ship doesn't really do fighters. Drones aren't really fighters. Anyways, we'll give it a bit of extra cargo. There we go. And again, reinforced bulkheads. Strap a cannon or two to it, just in case. Okay. Now to the big ships. So for my ship, let's put me in charge. And for the destroyer, put my officer in charge. Now, this ship is quite unique in that it has a lot of speed related to it. It has a maximum burn level increase and a combat speed increase. But it has to counter that, a weapon range reduction. So you can see here, this is probably one of the fastest ships in any fleet you could put in, especially with the pirate modifications. And it also has maneuvering jets, which is going to mean this ship is a very agile combat ship, but at the same time it has relatively good hull integrity and excellent shield systems. Now we could go for a custom fit. Let's see what some of the automated fits will be giving us. So we got one that emphasizes heavy armor, which we don't have as a modification. Dedicated targeting core, which emphasizes the range penalty countering out. And strike, which will counteract the hull strength, but give us some extra fighter space. With an ECCM package. Okay, so that's an interesting variant of doing that ship. Unfortunately, this station doesn't sell any fighters. Let's see if close support might be the 35% for cruiser ships, counteracting the 15% reduction. Okay, so that might be the best for now. It has Typhoon Reaper launchers, point defense systems, more missiles, and heavy mortars. This will be a very good missile boat. So about weapon groups. For the destroyer, I try to find these heavy autocannons if I can. These guns can be very effective on a destroyer like this. Combined with a range mod, you have a ship which is a floating artillery battery. You don't even really need to use missiles for this. But unfortunately, there's only one heavy autocannon in our cargo holds. We could pair it up with the Arbalest autocannons, but let's take a look at what the auto fits will give us. So we have, again, heavy armor that we don't have, close support, and overdriven. You should all know by now what the safety overrides will do to the ship. Make it very fast, but it will burn out very quickly. This ship in particular isn't fast, and even if we strap this to it, it wouldn't be much faster, so this is a little bit of a... I understand their intention for it, but it's not going to work, I think. But close support emphasizes a lot of cannons, and it counteracts the speed disadvantage a little bit. We'll go for that. So it's stuck the heavy autocannon, and the Arbalest cannons, and a lot of rocket launchers. I'm quite fond of that. Whilst we're here, we'll level our officer up. Maybe we can boost the missiles a little bit. In this case, we have impact mitigation. 20% reduction to armor damage is very, very juicy. I'll take that. Okay, and lastly, the civilian cruiser. You might notice, what are you thinking? It's civilian? Because it's got civilian grade hull. So I have to counteract that with the militarized hull. And it has the surveying equipment, which in this case I believe is 20. As this is a cruiser ship, I'm not sure if it goes from 5 to 10 is for cruiser or 20 is for cruiser. But regardless, this is, I believe, at least 4 times what a drone tender can provide. If you see a drone tender has surveying equipment as well. But drone tenders also have a salvage gantry. In this case, if you have a salvage rig, this type of ship here, it has the same mod, the salvage gantry, but the salvage gantry on this salvage rig is about, I believe, 4 times as effective as one on a drone tender. as this is technically a larger ship. I believe it's classified as a cruiser type for the sake of the salvage gantry size. And in fact, if I have extra money, I am going to buy this salvage gantry. Actually, with that degraded engines, I could maybe install a speed engine upgrade for that, just to counteract that difficulty. We'll have to see. Actually, I'm not sure how much space. Does it give me the indication of how much it has? 16 ordnance points. It's got a large sensor profile as well. Maybe getting a fixed version of this might be better than having to deal with counteracting that engine speed problem. Anyway, back to the refit. So we want to counteract militarized. It's a great hull. Okay. The ship may be involved in combat, so it might explode, so let's get reinforced bulkheads. And now it's up to us to decide how we want to perform things. So this ship is not particularly fast. It's actually roughly the same speed as the... Oh, it's slightly slower actually than the destroyer. It does have a couple of options, either to emphasize armor or balanced ranged capability. For now, however, let's see what we can go for. So we have a phase lance and a graviton beam. 200% versus shields. Provides no hard flux. This, however, has a very large range, which is what I probably want to emphasize on this kind of ship. And then missiles. Oh, we don't actually have a lot available to us here, unfortunately. We'll go with the Typhoon. And we'll strap on the sabots until we get a better variant later. And for cannons, let's see. I think a couple of arbalests should be good. Or in this case, arbalest and heavy mortar. And in terms of mods, anything we could do here to make the ship a little bit better. Go for a dedicated targeting core. But the ship doesn't really have much in the way of direct cannons. Ideally, I prefer something to emphasize the missiles, but we don't really have any mods for that at the moment. So I'll get the dedicated core, and the rest will go into capacitors and vents. Okay. And for this, I want to save this variant. Actually, I'll call it the militarized variant. And save that. Now, I hope later on when I get to more stations, I can keep this upgrade weapons checked, and it will automatically grab better variants of these guns the next time I go to this ship. And I believe that's all. Now, because we militarized those ships, we also increased their crew requirements. So you see now, I need to grab a few more crew. So let's do that. In fact, we just grab all of these guys. Bang. Notice we have some fighters here, the Warthogs and the Daggers, but these are bombers and heavy fighters. I wouldn't want to use these with a converted hangar, really, because they would consume so many ordnance points. Specifically for the bombers, I believe it's almost twice the ordnance points, and for fighters it's, I believe, 30%. I can take a quick look, actually. If I actually had converted hangars. Okay, anyway, regardless, so we've got everything we need. Could do grabbing some fuel. Let's take all the fuel, actually. Some supplies. Don't be afraid about spending initially, because you're going to go exploring anyway. You don't want to get caught without supplies or fuel. The costs of doing that would be far more than what you'd want anyway. Okay. Make sure you have some volatiles for your neutron detector, some metals for building satellites. And in this case, this station doesn't seem to have any of the other metal required for building satellites, so hopefully we'll find some out in space. But for now, we can continue onwards. In this case, I would like to go and continue my exploration of this little corridor here, and I'll cut again once I have reached these systems. See you in a second.